Start on your heels. Close your eyes. Start to make the length of your inhales match the length of your exhales. Slightly constrict the back of your throat, activating Ujjayi breathing. It is where you breathe in and out of your nose and make it sound like Darth Vader. The theme for today's class is going forwards and backwards. Push and pull, retreating to advance. Go ahead and set an intention for today's class. Slowly flutter your eyes open and come up on your knees, setting up for camel pose. So you can be up on your toes or have your feet flat behind you. You want to bring your hands behind your back, fingers facing up or down. Start to bring your shoulder blades together and then push your hips forward. As you do that, start to take an extreme back bend here, looking back behind you, neck falling back, head falling back behind you. For a deeper expression of the pose, your hands can come to your ankles. And for the deepest expression, your feet can be flat on the mat. Make sure you're really pushing your hips forward. Slowly come up out of the pose and come to hands and knees on the mat, tabletop position. As you inhale, your gaze is forward, your hips come back, your belly drops, and as you exhale, you curl your back up, you gaze towards your navel, cat pose. So as you inhale, come back to cow, and as you exhale, go to cat, and keep taking these movements, matching the speed to the breath. Warming up the spine. Feeling the vertebrae and the spine getting closer together and then being pulled apart in a nice stretch. Come to a neutral spine and then raise your right arm forward and your left leg back behind you. And you don't want to push everything up too high. You really want to pretend like someone is coming behind you and pulling your leg away from the side of your body, and someone's coming up to your front and pulling your arm away from their body. Bring your right arm and your left leg back down to the mat. And on your next inhale, bring your left arm forward and your right leg back behind you, feeling an activation in the core as you breathe here. Come back down. And then on your next inhale, bring your right arm forward and your left leg back. And when you exhale, bring that down. And as you inhale, your left arm comes forward, right leg back. And as you exhale, come down. And keep taking these movements with the breath. So as you inhale, one arm goes forward, one leg back, and you exhale, it comes back down. Come to a neutral spine, and then kick your feet back behind you, coming into a plank pose. So your shoulders are directly over your wrists and your heels are fighting back behind you. Your tailbone's twisting back and down so your core is activated. Slowly lower down chaturanga, but don't come onto the mat, and then lift up. That's one push-up. Slowly lower down halfway and come up. That's two. Slowly lower down, come up. That's three. Slowly lower down, push up. That is four. Slowly lower down, push up. Bring your knees to the wide edges of the mat. Your toes connect behind you. Your hips sink down towards your heels, child's pose. Breathing. Recovering here. Slowly start to come up back into a plank position, and then lower down halfway and come up. One. Lower down, come up. That's two. Lower down, come up. That's three. Lower down, come back up. Four. Lower down, come up. Five. Bring your knees to the edges, child's pose. Recovering again. Breathing. Slowly come back up. Kick your legs back, plank position. Check in with your posture here. Is your core activated and strong? Slowly lower down all the way to the mat, and then inhale up to a back bend of your choosing. And then exhale over your toes to the first downward facing dog of today's class. So in this first dog, you can wiggle it out, you can take whichever movements feel good, you can pedal out your dog, feeling a nice stretch in the back of the legs. On an exhale, bring your feet to your hands. You can either step or hop. And then inhale up to a flat back, shoulders away from the ears. On your next exhale, lower down, forward fold. Stomach touching your thighs. Neck is loose here. Knees bent as much as you need, with your hips pushing up behind you to stretch your hamstrings. On an inhale, rise up to a flat back. Arms come overhead, gaze is up past your hands. Shoulders are still down away from the ears. On an exhale, palms touch and trace a line in front of your face, stopping hands prayer at heart center. A variation of mountain pose. Your knees are activated, the tops of the knees, so that's the quadriceps. Your tailbone is twisting back and down, which activates your glutes and your core. Your shoulders are back and down away from the ears. Neck is flat. Head is tall, chin slightly tucked. Inhale your arms up overhead, and then exhale with a flat back down, forward fold. Inhale to a halfway lift. And then exhale, plant your hands and step or hop back to a plank. And slowly lower down with your elbows at your sides, chaturanga. Inhale to your back bend of choice. Make sure your chest is open and your shoulders are away from the ears. And now exhale to a downward facing dog. A few breaths here, and we will take a few more sun salutations, one movement per breath. Vinyasa flow style. On an exhale, bring your feet to your hands and inhale to a halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, arms sweep up overhead. Gaze past your fingertips to the sky. Exhale, prayer at heart center. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plank and chaturanga down, one breath, one exhale. Inhale to your back bend, and exhale to downward facing dog. Breathe here. We use down dog as a resting pose. Exhale your feet to your hands and inhale to a halfway lift. Forward fold. Arms sweep up overhead. Prayer at heart center. Arms back up overhead. Forward fold down. Inhale halfway. Exhale to plank and chaturanga down. Inhaling to your back bend. And exhaling over the toes to downward dog. On an inhale, your right leg rises up behind you. Exhale it to meet your hands. And you're going to spin up to a warrior two. So there's a 90-degree bend in your front knee. Your knee is over your ankle, and you're tracking your knee towards your small toe. You're not letting it collapse inward to your left. Your left leg is straight behind you. The left edge of your back foot is parallel with the back edge of your mat. Your hips are opening, your chest is opening, your arms are at a T, and you can go ahead and gaze back behind to make sure your back arm is where it's supposed to be. And then bring your gaze back towards your front hand past your fingertips. Breathing into warrior two. Windmill your hands down to the mat, framing your front foot, and kick your front foot back to meet your back foot and come into a downward dog. On an exhale, bring your feet to your hands and inhale to a halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, arms up overhead. Exhale, prayer at heart center. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, down, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale to plank, chaturanga down. Inhaling to your back bend. And exhaling over the toes to downward facing dog. On your next inhale, raise your left leg back behind you, toes pointing down to the ground, and then exhale it to your hands, spinning up to a warrior two, making micro adjustments to your posture here, checking in visually, checking in mentally with the pose, tensing muscles you need to tense and letting go of muscles you need to release. Windmill your hands down to the mat, kick it back to downward facing dog. Exhale your feet to your hands, halfway lift, forward fold, arms sweep up overhead. Exhale, prayer, heart center. Inhale up. Heel toe your feet together, big toes touch. Sink your hips back, chair pose. So you're putting most of the weight in your heels. You're twisting your tailbone back and down behind you, lengthening your spine, hollowing out your core. And your arms are up overhead, but your shoulders are down, away from the ears. Bring your hands to prayer and forward fold. Inhale to a halfway lift. Exhale, plant the hands, plank, chaturanga down. Inhaling to a back bend and exhaling over the toes, downward facing dog. On an inhale, your right leg comes up. Exhale, come through to meet your hands. Pop up into a crescent lunge. So there's a 90-degree bend in your front knee. Your knee is over your ankle. Your back leg is straight and strong behind you. The back heel is fighting back behind you. And your arms are up, but your shoulders are down. Feeling the tension in the pose. You can exhale your hands down to the mat, kick it back to dog. And breathe. On an exhale, bring your feet to your hands and inhale halfway. Forward fold, down. Inhale, arms up with a flat back overhead. Bring them to prayer at heart center. And then back up overhead. Heel toe your feet together. Come back into a chair pose. Breathing through chair. Bring your hands to prayer, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plank, chaturanga down. Inhaling to your back bend. And exhaling over the toes, downward facing dog. Inhale your left leg up. On an exhale, kick it through. Come up to a crescent lunge. Exhale your hands down to the mat, kicking your front leg back to downward facing dog. Exhale, feet to hands, halfway lift, forward fold, arms up overhead, prayer. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Plank and chaturanga down. Inhaling to your back bend. And exhaling over the toes to downward facing dog. On an inhale, right leg rises behind you. You can exhale, kick it through. Come up to a crescent pose. Connect with the pose, then bring your hands to prayer at heart center, twisting to the right. Left elbow can connect to the front knee, and your gaze is up behind, past your right shoulder to the sky. If it's too much, you can bring your back knee down to the mat. Come back to center, lower your hands to the mat, and kick it back to dog. On an exhale, bring your feet to your hands. Inhaling halfway. Exhale down. Inhale, arms up overhead. Prayer at heart center. Arms up overhead. Swan dive, forward fold with a flat back. Halfway lift. Plant the hands, plank, chaturanga down. Inhaling to your back bend. And exhaling over the toes to downward facing dog. Lift your left leg behind you. Exhale, kick it through to the hands. Come up, crescent lunge, connecting with that pose, then bringing your hands to prayer and twisting to the left. Right elbow can gently connect with that front knee, and your gaze is over your left shoulder. Come back to center. Lower your hands to the mat. Kick it back to downward facing dog. Exhale, feet come to hands. Halfway lift. Lower down, forward fold. Bring it up, arms overhead. Prayer hands come down to heart center. Hands go back up. Heel toe your feet together. Sink back into chair pose. Bring your hands to prayer, forward fold, halfway lift, plank, chaturanga, back bend, and downward facing dog. We're going to go through a playful sequence here, so follow along. Right leg up, swing it through to your hands, spin up past warrior two, right to reverse warrior. For just a breath, you can hold it for as long as you want. We're going to let you do the sequence on your own time. Now come to a side angle pose, bringing your right elbow to the front knee. Then come back to reverse warrior. And then windmill your hands back down to the mat, kicking your right leg back, staying in dog for a breath or two, and then inhale your left leg up. And we're going to do the same sequence on the other side. So kick it through, spin up past warrior two into reverse warrior, transition right into side angle pose, feeling the stretches in your side body, back to reverse warrior, and then windmill your hands down to the mat, kick it back to dog. And now play around with the sequence to your own breath, doing it 3 or 4 more times, and then meet me in child's pose. So you're alternating your legs as you go back to dog. So first the right leg, going into reverse, and then side angle, and then reverse, and then switching to the left leg, going at your own speed, taking one movement per breath, or if you're really enjoying a stretch, you can hold it for a few breaths. It's up to you to play with this sequence and have fun with it. At any time, you can meet me in child's pose. Start to finish up and then bring your knees to the wide edges of the mat, child's pose. Someone once told me that relaxation is a dirty word, especially in the culture of the United States. And a lot of people think child's pose is a bit more relaxing. Sometimes it can have that connotation, and sometimes it's negative. And I like to think of child's pose as a bit more of a recovery pose, and I like the phrasing of recovery over relaxation because although they're essentially the same thing, people think of recovery positively, and relaxation sometimes is looked as a negative. So don't ever be afraid to take a child's pose during a yoga class or any pose during a yoga class if it is calling to you. Slowly come up out of the pose into downward facing dog. On an inhale, right leg rises, kick it through, pop up to crescent. Bring your hands to prayer, twisting to the right. Connect with twisting crescent, and then step your back foot up to meet your top foot. So now you're in a twisting chair pose. Double check your knees that they are in line with each other and one isn't popping forward. And for a little more variation, you can bring your bottom hand towards a block, your shin, or the mat, and your right arm can raise up to the sky. Come back to regular chair pose, then bring your hands to prayer and forward fold down. Inhaling to a halfway lift, exhaling, forward fold. Arms up overhead, prayer at heart center. Inhale your arms back up overhead. Come to a forward fold. Inhale halfway. Exhale to plank and chaturanga. Inhale to your back bend. And exhale to downward facing dog. Inhale your left leg up. Exhale it through to your hands. Coming up to crescent lunge on the other side. Hands come to prayer. The wind is very powerful here today. Twist to the left. Crescent twist. Step your back foot up to meet your front, so twisting chair pose. Again, checking your knees to make sure that they are in line. And if you would like, deepening the expression of the pose by opening your arms up. You can even use your elbow against your knee to twist deeper. come to classic chair pose, and then bring your hands to prayer and lower them down to the mat. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, arms up overhead. Exhale, prayer at heart center. Arms sweep up overhead. Forward fold down. Come up halfway. Plant your hands to plank, chaturanga down, and stay down, coming to rest on your stomach on the mat. You can rest your forehead on your forearm, rest on your chin, or place one cheek on the mat. If you're resting on one cheek, you can switch sides to be gentle to your neck. Now bring your gaze down, and your arms come up overhead, and lift your arms and your legs up off of the mat, digging your hips down, using every muscle to tense and lift your arms in front of you and your legs back behind you. A modification of locust pose here. Now transition to locust by bringing your arms, swinging them back behind you, palms facing up. Lower everything down to the mat, resting. If you rest on one cheek, switch sides. Now bring your chin back to the mat and then raise your arms and your legs up into locust pose. So your arms are behind you, palms facing up. And now transition, bringing your arms forward overhead, palms facing each other. Breathe up, tense every muscle, and now drop everything back down to the mat, resting. Switching cheeks if you're resting on one side. Now bring your hands underneath your shoulders, retuck your toes, and push up into a plank position. And then lower your knees down to the mat, kick your heels off to one side, and lower your seat down to the mat, and kick your legs out in front of you. We are going to come to a two-legged hamstring stretch. So you want the bottoms of your legs to make as much contact with the mat or the ground beneath you. You want to flex your toes forward towards your body. Your back is straight. Inhale, your arms up overhead, and with a straight spine, come forward as far as you can. So you'll notice I am not very flexible in the hamstrings, so I can't come too far forward with a straight back. But we don't want to round our back. We don't want to hunch our shoulders forward. We want a hamstring stretch with a straight back, hinging from the hips. So our chest remains open and our shoulders are opening as well, away from the ears, down. Breathing, making space as we come forward. And if you are quite flexible in the hamstring and this is a bit too easy, you can always bring a yoga block to the bottom of your feet so that you are reaching past your feet, past the yoga block to get a deeper stretch. Come back up out of the pose and lower down onto your back. Taking a few breaths here before we get into the next pose. We're going to set up for bridge pose or wheel. So you can get ready for either pose depending on what's in your practice. For bridge, bring the bottoms of your feet down to the mat. Make sure you can brush your heels with your fingertips, and then raise your hips up to the sky. Tuck your shoulders underneath your body, so you're hiking up onto your shoulders, and then make a fist underneath your seat. And really use your quads, the front of the thigh, to lift your hips higher. If you're in wheel, I'm assuming you know what you're doing, so I don't need to cue wheel. And if you don't know wheel and you would like to learn, there is a video for that I can link to. Slowly lower back down onto the mat and bring your knees to your chest, giving them a gentle squeeze, and rock left to right. So this is a great counter to the back stretch we just did. A great way to release that tension. Think back to the intention of today's class and remember the theme of push and pull. Sometimes in life we feel like we take one step backwards and one step forwards, or 2 steps forwards and 10 steps backwards. Constant push-pull in life. So get ready to do an inversion of your choosing here. Basically the goal is to get your legs up. If you have a wall or a pole, you can lay down against it and bring your feet up. Or you can come to shoulder stand or head stand or hand stand. Anything that gets your toes up in the air and your legs, get the blood flowing in the opposite direction in the legs. Just for a little bit. So go ahead and take any variation wherever you are. You can play around, moving your legs around. If you're in shoulder stand, you can come to plow. Slowly and safely lower back down to the mat. If you're in shoulder stand, 1 vertebrae at a time. You can use your hands to guide you down gently and safely. You want to bring your right knee into your chest. We're going to do a supine twist. So with your left hand, bring your right knee to the left. Your right hand comes to a T, and your gaze is past your right fingertips. You can use your left hand to bring your right knee closer down to the ground, or your arms can both be at a T. Breathing into this twist. It's great for digestion. It can stretch out the hips if you've got nice tight hips like I do. Well, I wouldn't call them nice. They're just hips. You can slowly come out of the pose, and we're going to switch sides. So bring the left knee in to the chest. Give it a gentle squeeze, and then guide it to your right with your right hand. Your gaze is to the left over your fingertips. Make sure both shoulders are maintaining contact with the mat or the ground underneath you. For some people, this is an extreme sensation in the back or the shoulders. For me, it used to be extreme in the back. Now it's extreme in the hips. It's kind of cool to see how over time, even the same pose can feel very, very different in a different part of the body. You can bring your knees back to center. Hug both knees into the chest, giving them a gentle squeeze, rocking left and right. You can come into happy baby pose, so you're bringing the bottoms of the feet up to the sky and grabbing the outer edges of the feet, massaging the lower back, the spine. And as you bring one knee closer towards your armpit, you might feel a nice stretch in the hip. This is probably my favorite pose in all of yoga. Take a moment now to take whichever pose you would like. So if there's a pose that's calling your name that we didn't get to today, go ahead and come into that pose. Or stay in happy baby, or hug your knees into the chest, or you can go right into the final resting pose, Shavasana or corpse pose. A few more breaths in your final pose. Whichever pose you're in, slowly start to come out of it and bring your feet flat down onto the mat. Your toes can splay out to the sides. Your arms are at your sides, palms up. Shavasana. Concentrate on relaxing every muscle in your body, like a wave from the ocean rolling over you. Relaxation and recovery here. There is progress whether you are going forward or backward. The thing is to move. Edgar Cayce. The thing is to move. Slowly introduce physical movement back into your body. Slight movements at first, transitioning to slightly larger movements. Bring your arms overhead, stretching from fingertips to toes. Bring your knees into your chest, giving them a gentle squeeze and rocking gently left to right. Roll to your right side in fetal position, resting your cheek on your bicep. With your eyes still closed, you can push off against your left hand and come up to a comfortable seated position. Spine nice and straight and tall, chin slightly tucked. Thank yourself for coming to the mat today and for being kind to your mind and your body. The light in me shines in the light in you. Namaste.